Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's kick off our video with a story about a young woman breaking stereotypes in construction and dealing with her fair share of awkward encounters along the way. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Kevin's Jeep Liberty plan drives the company into a $100,000 hole. This all started about a year ago when my husband was faced with a decision that became a long-running saga involving office politics, poorly thought-out management decisions, and a good dose of petty revenge. Here's the story. My husband works in a department that requires a lot of travel, often to remote locations. He's responsible for inspecting industrial sites like oil and gas lines, batteries, and tanks. These sites are frequently located far from roads, meaning he has to drive through fields and rough terrain to get there. For this, a fully equipped 4x4 truck with tow ropes, shovels, and other tools to get unstuck is an absolute necessity. In his department, there are only about 6 people, and each of them travels at least 6 months a year, anywhere from a day or 2 to a full week. The rest of the company doesn't have to do anything remotely close to this. A couple of guys, including my husband, own their own trucks, while the others share 2 fleet trucks. The 2 fleet trucks come with company-paid parking spots located just a block away from the office. These spots were assigned to the most senior people in the department who didn't already have their own vehicles, though anyone in need of a truck could book one. This arrangement worked smoothly as the team is very tight-knit and there were no complaints. The senior team members could park near the office, avoiding the ridiculous cost of downtown parking. They were encouraged to take the trucks home at the end of the day for safety reasons, as there had been incidents of vandalism. Anytime a truck was out, the parking spot was available for anyone else to use. My husband's position as manager meant he had his own parking spot, which was an added taxable benefit. Nothing free here. He had the spot, and when he was out of town, I'd sometimes use it as well. This did not sit well with certain individuals who started to grumble about it. They were jealous that my husband's team not only got to use the trucks, but also had the benefit of the parking spots. Then enter Kevin, the guy in charge. He told my husband that the trucks were costing too much in gas, and because they were nearing the end of their lifespan, they'd be replaced by cheaper Jeep Liberties. Kevin was convinced these trucks were overkill and unnecessary, even though he didn't have any insight into the kind of work my husband's team does. Kevin said they would purchase 3 Jeep Liberties, and my husband would be expected to use one of them if needed. It was clear this decision was made partly to prevent me from using the parking spot and possibly because Kevin was jealous of the department's flexibility with the trucks. Kevin also stated that the 3rd Jeep would be available for the rest of the staff in the building to use for meetings outside of the city, which seemed like a move to restrict my husband's use of vehicles. Kevin also implied that my husband was somehow taking advantage of the company by charging mileage on his own truck. Keep in mind, Kevin has no direct involvement with my husband's work and doesn't understand why he needs to travel so much. When Kevin decided to take over the scheduling of the vehicles, my husband pushed back. He wasn't happy about the situation as he knew that Kevin had no clue about the logistics of their job. Plus, my husband's a big guy and a small Jeep Liberty wasn't going to work well for him. He'd already had issues with the Jeep getting stuck in a field. On top of that, the entire department had to go through an outsider to schedule the trucks now, making it a huge inconvenience. Despite his reservations, my husband went along with the changes and informed his previous boss, who was a consultant at the time, that he would no longer be able to use the parking spot. His old boss understood and was sympathetic. The 3 new Jeep Liberties were purchased and the old fleet trucks were phased out. A few weeks into using the Jeeps, one of them had its window smashed out. My husband informed Kevin, and Kevin asked him to take it to the shop. But because Kevin had taken over scheduling, it was impossible to know when the vehicle would be available to take in for repairs. Kevin was also caught off guard by the need for regular maintenance on the Jeeps, which hadn't been an issue with the trucks, as my husband's unit was proactive about upkeep. As expected, things started to go downhill. The scheduling system became a nightmare with vehicles double booked, and Kevin was forced to explain to the executive director that there were no vehicles available for a scheduled meeting. This led to a series of issues, culminating in the executive director telling Kevin that he needed to be more accessible in the mornings, forcing him to meet staff at 5 a.m. to pick up keys. Within 6 weeks, all 3 Jeep Liberties were reassigned to senior staff members, and my husband returned to using his own truck. The Jeeps were still causing problems, frequently getting stuck and requiring expensive repairs, and their gas mileage was terrible. 2 years later, after a full cost analysis of the gas, breakdowns, and tow fees, the company finally decided to buy new trucks. Kevin eventually gave up the extra parking spot and called it a day. In the end, this entire situation cost the company over $100,000. Kevin learned the hard way that meddling with my husband's team and their logistics wasn't a good idea, and he now keeps his nose out of other people's parking spots. As for my husband, he's back to his own truck and no longer has to deal with Kevin's poor decisions. Kevin sounds like a jerk. I will never understand how companies put some people in charge who don't understand the unit or at least not willing to learn. Generally, if someone has been doing X for a while, there's a reason, and it's best to learn why before changing it. And our second story. HOA calls 911 on me. Hi, my name's Bill. I recently inherited from my parents a house in Montana where I spent all my childhood summer vacations. My father, Harry, always took a hell of a lot of pride in the fact that the house wasn't under any association. He called it our family fortress. After my parents passed away, I sorted out all the paperwork and moved in with my wife, Emily, and our 10-year-old son, Tommy. I'll be straight with you, the house was in pretty rough shape. It came with worn-out floors, faded paint on the walls, and a fence so flimsy it was practically begging the wind to knock it over. My folks in their later years were more concerned with relaxing than fixing things, but none of that scared me. I'd been dreaming of making this house my personal refuge for a long time. Emily and I jumped into renovations with gusto. We painted the facade, replaced the roof. Then I decided to put up gates on the porch and replace the old fence so Tommy wouldn't run out into the road, and so we'd have a bit more damn safety. While I was digging fence posts by hand, neighbors would pass by giving me a nod and saying, "Great idea, Bill." I figured everything was going fine, until my car showed up for the first time. That day's memory is burned in my mind. I was just finishing the new gates when a guy in his 50s appeared wearing a suit that screamed, "I'm the boss here." He introduced himself. "My name is Makar. I'm the president of your neighborhood HOA. We need to talk." I blinked in surprise. "Sorry, but to my knowledge, my house isn't in any damn HOA. It's a block away from your association's main properties." Makar waved a stack of papers right under my nose as if he'd just discovered the Holy Grail. "Apparently you're unaware. There's an agreement that puts your lot under HOA authority, and it looks like you've broken several rules. Installing gates without approval, replacing the fence, that's going to cost you in fines." My blood began to simmer, but I tried to keep my cool. "Sir, I think you're mixing up addresses. My father, Harry, fought tooth and nail his whole life against any document joining the HOA, but if you've got proof, let's see it." Makar started rustling through the papers, acting like he was looking for something, then promptly changed the subject. "I understand your confusion, but believe me, we've got our crap in order. We'll send you a copy of the contract and an invoice for the fine. Honestly, our HOA doesn't like people going rogue." Then he strutted off, leaving me with a sour taste in my mouth. For the next few weeks, nothing happened. While I waited for the so-called documents, I managed to paint the porch, and Emily helped by painting the doors a bright shade of red. But one day, I saw that same damn car pull up to our porch again. My car got out looking even more pissed off. "Bill, I see you're not in a hurry to pay the fine. It's already around $5,000. When can we expect your payment?" At that point, I was really starting to lose my patience. "Makar, I've already told you I'm not in the damn HOA. Show me even one piece of legitimate paperwork that says my house is in your jurisdiction." He scowled. "You'll be getting an eviction notice soon if you keep this up." I couldn't help the sarcastic grin. You know what my father would have said? "This is the second time you've showed up with no evidence, just empty threats. Come back a third time only if you have a court order in hand. So have a nice day, buddy." I slammed the gate. To be safe, I installed code locks on the gates a few days later just in case this jerk tried something else. Not long after, I found a stack of fines in my mailbox, plus a letter titled "Eviction Notice." I read it. Total bullcrap. No seals, no lawyer signatures, just some half-butted threats. "Otherwise, we'll be forced to pursue legal action, seize your home, and clear the lot." I was pissed off, but the worst incident was when Makar had the nerve to call 911 pretending I threatened him with physical harm. I guess he hoped the cops would scare me, but they showed up and saw through his crap instantly. Right in front of me, they wrote Makar a ticket for a false report. That was the last straw. I decided to handle the legal side of things properly. I gathered all the house documents, my parents' will, copies of the old purchase agreement, which made it crystal clear that my lot was never part of the HOA. I found a solid lawyer named James and told him the whole story. James shook his head. Well, this thing happens more often than you'd think. HOAs trying to expand their reach or make a quick buck through fines. Don't worry, I'll get everything ready for court. While James was working, I kept getting more letters from Makar, each listing some new bullcrap fine for breaking the neighborhood's architectural style, for irresponsible behavior, whatever the hell that means, you name it. But at that point, I just forwarded everything to James. By the time the court date rolled around, I'll admit I was a bit on edge, but James did a fantastic job. We showed the judge the original documents from my father and the previous owners. Plain as day, this house had always been independent. The HOA's representative started stumbling over his words, trying to explain how they decided I was part of their damn club and couldn't provide a single genuine signed contract. Makar pulled his usual stunt, throwing around emotional statements, but the judge clearly had no patience for that nonsense. The court rules in favor of the plaintiff. The house is not part of the HOA. All charges and fines imposed by the HOA are hereby declared invalid. Then the judge tossed in one more bombshell. Additionally, the defendant, Makar, is required to compensate the plaintiff's court costs and damages for harassment and threats. If you could have seen Makar's face, he went whiter than a Montana winter sky. Talk about karma coming back to bite you in the butt. Afterward, a real crap storm erupted within the HOA. Turns out this wasn't the first time Makar had been terrorizing homeowners. He was fired from his position as HOA president, and I heard a bunch of the neighbors are seriously considering either throwing out the rest of the board or leaving the HOA completely. So this story ended quite nicely. I ran into my neighbor Jack the other day. He'd just come out of his lawyer's office. He said he's also ditching the HOA, fed up with the arbitrary fees and a board that always squeezes the hell out of you. We joked about Makar's next empire, and Jack winked. Maybe Makar can try selling insurance against bear attacks. They're about as legit as his documents. So far, all's quiet. Makar hasn't shown his face, and I hope he never does. Emily, Tommy, and I are settling in more every day. We're working on the garden now. A new fence, solid gates, and no outsiders trying to boss us around. Exactly what my father always wanted. And I'm damn glad justice finally prevailed. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.